If I ran this place, I'd make sure people like you worked in the back, where no one has to see you." The words hit harder than any bullet she ever dodged in a war zone. The diner went silent. Forks paused mid-air. The clink of a coffee cup echoed like a gunshot. All eyes turned to her. Not the menu, not the special board. Her. To the woman with the long scar cutting down her cheek like a lightning bolt frozen in flesh. No one spoke. No one stood. No one dared. Until one voice cut through the quiet like a flag raised in battle. "Sir," the boy said, his voice controlled but trembling. "That scar. It's a badge. You only have a mouth." Everyone turned again, this time to the teenager in the crisp military academy uniform, standing tall, fists clenched, his face flushed with something fierce and ancient. Respect. And just like that, the whole room changed. "Thank you for being here. Sometimes, the smallest moments carry the greatest meaning." Today's story is one of those, quiet, powerful, and worth remembering. If it touches your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're warmly invited to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next one. Now let's take a closer look at what really happened. Who is the woman behind the scar? What brought her here? Maddie Colburn didn't remember the exact moment the scar stopped hurting. Not the physical kind. Nerve pain still flared on bad weather days. But the other kind. The part that stung when people looked just a little too long or just a little too fast away. At 44, Maddie had spent the last 15 years working the midday shift at Jean's Griddle, a roadside diner on the outskirts of Carver, Missouri. It wasn't a place with frills or fancy espresso machines, but it had two things that mattered: bottomless coffee and booths that remembered you. And Maddie, she made sure everyone who walked in felt human again, even if they didn't deserve it. She moved with the practiced efficiency of a dancer past her prime, still graceful, but careful not to show where the joints ached. Her right knee, stiff from an old war injury, barely slowed her anymore. Neither did the heat of the grill, the clatter of plates, or the long scar that curved from her left ear to the base of her jaw, like a second smile gone wrong. What people didn't know, or forgot, was that Maddie Colburn had once worn a different uniform. Before she carried meatloaf and fries to table 7, she'd carried blood bags and morphine syringes across the sands of Ramadi, Iraq. From 2005 to 2009, she'd been a combat medic with the 47th Medical Evacuation Battalion. And the scar, a gift from a roadside IED that turned the back of her Humvee into a pressure cooker of shrapnel. The blast nearly took her eye. It didn't take her courage. She never talked much about it. Not to the customers, not even to the regulars who'd sat in her section for years. Not because she was ashamed, but because it was hers. Like the tattoo on her shoulder or the dog tags she kept in a cedar box under her bed. Some memories were meant to be worn quietly. Inside Jean's Griddle, Maddie was known for three things: her pancakes, always golden and never burned; her coffee pours, perfect timing, never too soon, never too late; her calm, even when teenagers threw fries or businessmen snapped fingers. To the staff, she was steady. To the patrons, she was invisible in the best way. Dependable. She knew who liked their eggs. Sunny Runny. Who needed decaf even when they didn't ask, and who didn't want anyone talking to them on Wednesdays. But no amount of grace or grit could stop what happened that Thursday just after noon. The lunch crowd was thick. Truckers in stained flannels, retirees with crossword puzzles, tourists passing through on their way to Lake Randall. Maddie was dropping off a tray of cheeseburgers when the bell above the door rang twice. That double ring meant someone let the door close too fast. She turned just in time to see them, 5 strangers in business suits and pencil skirts, laughing too loud for the size of the place. Big city energy. Weekenders. Out-of-towners. She didn't flinch. "Emma," she called gently to the young hostess, booth by the windows open. The teenage girl returned a second later, lips tight. The guy in the blue suit asked if we had a hot waitress available. I didn't know what to say. Maddie gave a tired smile. "You said nothing. That's fine. I've got it." "Are you sure?" "Debbie could?" "No," Maddie said, already reaching for Minnis. "That's my section." She wasn't trying to be brave. Just fair. These people were passing through. They'd eat, they'd leave, and life would go on. She didn't know that her life was about to split wide open. They barely looked at the menace when she approached. "Welcome to Jeans," she began, her voice even, her apron clean. "I'm Maddie, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man in the blue suit looked up, mid-sentence. His mouth stopped moving, his eyes fixed on her face. On the scar, it took less than half a second for the disgust to show. "Jesus," he muttered, not under his breath, but not loudly enough to be outright aggressive. One of the women with him chuckled nervously. Maddie kept her smile. "Today's special is the open-faced roast beef sandwich with—" "What happened to you?" he interrupted, making a circular motion near his own face. "Car wreck or something?" Maddie didn't miss a beat. "I'll give y'all a minute with the menace," she said, and turned on her heel. Behind her, the man called after her, "Hey, I asked a question." She stopped, not because she wanted to, because she trained herself to. "Is there something I can help you with from the menu, sir?" He leaned back like a man enjoying himself too much. "If I ran this place," he said, voice louder now, "I wouldn't let someone like you serve tables. Kind of ruins the appetite, you know." Everything stopped. Forks hung in the air. The cooks went still behind the pass. Maddie stood there, orders in her hand, heart pounding against her ribs. Not with fear, but with shame. The kind of shame that isn't yours, but still lands on you like a brick to the chest. A few people glanced her way. One couple kept their eyes down. A girl with a laptop paused typing, frowned slightly, and looked away. No one said a thing, no one. Maddie nodded once. "I'll send another server over," she said quietly. "Probably for the best." Blue suit called after her. "Maybe someone whose face isn't trying to run away from itself." The laughter that followed was sharp and cold and meant to draw blood. Maddie walked to the kitchen, hands tight around her pad, but steps smooth and steady. No limp, no stumble. She would not give him that, not today. At a corner booth near the back, a teenage boy sat straight as a board. He hadn't touched his grilled cheese. The uniform he wore, stiff with pressed creases and polished buttons, marked him as a cadet from Ashridge Military Academy, one of the oldest preparatory schools in the state. Navy jacket, brass insignia on the collar, black boots laced tight. He looked like he hadn't even grown into it all yet, his shoulders still lanky, his wrists thin. But there was something in his eyes. Still, focused. He watched the scene unfold the way a soldier watches for an opening. Not fearfully, not lazily, but with precision. His mother sat across from him, a woman in her 40s with warm brown eyes and hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had seen it too. The way that man, blue suit, had looked at Maddie. The way the diner fell into that horrible, gutless quiet. She touched her son's arm, whispering, "Jacob, please don't." But Jacob Avery's knuckles were already white around his fork. And Maddie Colburn, former medic, survivor of 2 deployments, woman with a scar deeper than skin, stood behind the coffee counter, pretending to refill sugar caddies while she tried to breathe. Across the diner, the laughter at table 12 had resumed. "So, what, she got that scar from being reckless?" Blue suit said, loud enough to be heard. "Actions have consequences, right?" He looked around, expecting chuckles. But this time, even his friends stayed quiet. A man in a navy blazer coughed and checked his watch. A woman in heels shifted away from him slightly. Still, no one spoke, until the scrape of a chair dragged across the tile like a warning shot. Jacob Avery stood. His boots made a soft thud as he walked across the room, each step purposeful, measured. His mother whispered his name sharply. "Jacob, please sit down." He didn't. The boy marched straight to the large booth by the window. The one with the bullies. The one with blue suit. The one no adult had dared confront. And when he reached them, Jacob stopped. Back straight, chin up, like he was in front of a review line. Blue suit looked up, confused for half a beat, then grinned. "Well, look who wants to play hero," he said, sitting back with mock amusement. "What's on your mind, Junior GI?" Jacob's voice was clear. Measured. Military clear. "I'm training to be a soldier," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And if I'm ever wounded, I hope I can carry it the way she does." He didn't need to say Maddie's name. Everyone knew who he meant. Maddie froze behind the counter. The sugar packets in her hand stopped moving. Her heart skipped. Something rose in her throat she couldn't name. Blue Suit blinked, caught off guard, then laughed. "Oh, come on, kid." But Jacob wasn't finished. "That scar," he said, voice unwavering. "That's what honor looks like." His gaze didn't break. You only have a mouth." The diner rustled, like something shifting, waking up. A truck driver in a ball cap turned fully around on his stool. An elderly man with a Marine Corps pin on his lapel raised his coffee mug in silent salute. Blue Suit looked around for backup and found none. His friends avoided eye contact. His joke had turned cold. "Kid," he said, trying to regain control, "you don't know what you're talking about. This is adult business." Jacob didn't blink. "My grandfather came home from Vietnam without an arm," he said. People stared at him too, but he never hid it. He wore short sleeves every summer. Said it was the only way to make people learn. Blue Suit was visibly uncomfortable now, squirming in his seat. His smug grin cracked like old plaster. "Whatever," he muttered. "It was just a joke. Everyone's so sensitive these days." Jacob's voice cut through again, low and hard. "Jokes are supposed to be funny. Cruelty isn't humor." And that was it. The spell broke. People started nodding. The laptop girl looked up, closed her lid. The couple at table 6, who hadn't said a word before, began clapping softly. Then the Marine vet said, "Damn right, son." Maddie moved toward Jacob, almost without realizing it, drawn by the fire in his eyes. She saw now that his hands were trembling, just a little. Just enough to cost him something. But his posture, unshaken, she stepped beside him, quiet, steady. "What's your name?" she asked gently. He looked at her directly. "Jacob Avery, Ashridge Military Academy." "Ma'am." "Thank you, Jacob." Her voice broke slightly. But she didn't cry, not here, not now. From the kitchen doorway, Jean, the owner and manager, stepped forward with a face like stone and a check in hand. He walked straight to the booth and set the bill down on the table, without a word. "You folks are done," he said firmly. "But we haven't." "Yes, you have," Jean cut in. "I don't tolerate cowards in my restaurant." They left in silence. Even the woman with the expensive shoes didn't look up. The tip they left behind was too large. Guilt money, but no one picked it up. For the first time since that awful moment, the air inside the diner felt breathable again. Jacob walked back to his booth, cheeks flushed, his mother looking at him with a mix of pride and fear. "Are you mad?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Your father would have done the same thing." The lunch crowd thinned after that. Conversations resumed, but softer. The clatter of forks, the hum of the coffee pot, it all returned, but with a different rhythm, less noise, more heart. Maddie found herself by the register, hands trembling slightly as she restocked napkin holders. The nerves weren't from the confrontation. She'd faced worse in uniform. It was what came after, the moment when emotion finally had room to breathe. She could still feel the echo of Jacob's words vibrating in her chest. "That scar. That's what honor looks like. You only have a mouth." It played on a loop in her mind. Not because she wanted it to, but because it had changed something. Something she hadn't known still needed changing. Jean approached with a warm mug of coffee. He didn't say much, just looked her in the eyes and said, "You good?" Maddie nodded. "I think so." He gave a small grunt of approval and turned back toward the kitchen. Outside, the sun filtered through the blinds, striping the floor like camouflage. Maddie stood there for a moment, eyes half closed, letting herself feel something she'd pushed down for years, relief. She wasn't alone. Across the room, Jacob and his mother prepared to leave. She pulled out a folded bill for the check, but Jacob lingered near their booth, fingers tapping the back of the seat like he was thinking hard. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his uniform and pulled out something small. He walked back toward the counter toward Maddie, who looked up just as he approached. "I wanted to give you this," he said. He extended his hand. In his palm was a brass pin, an eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows in its talons. "It's my first achievement badge," he explained. "From Ashridge. You earn it when you complete your first round of basic training. It's not much, but—" he hesitated. But it's a start. Someday I'll earn more. But this one, I think it belongs with you. Maddie stared at the pin. It glowed in his hand like it had been forged in something sacred. She understood exactly what it meant. Not just the metal, not just the symbol, but the gesture, the legacy. I can't take this, she said softly. You earned it. Jacob looked up at her with a kind of wisdom that didn't match his age. So did you, he said. Every time you walk into this place, every time you serve people who don't deserve it, every time you show up even when you want to disappear. His words hit like truth dropped from a mountaintop. Maddie took the pin. It felt heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. Thank you, Cadet Avery, she said. This means more than I can say. Jacob gave her a small, sharp salute, then turned and rejoined his mother. As they walked to the door, Maddie saw the way the other patrons looked at him now. Not as a boy, not as a kid who made noise, but as something more. The man he was becoming. When the door closed behind them, Jean came up beside her again. What's that? He asked, nodding to the pin. Maddie opened her hand, showed him. Respect, she said. He nodded. About time. Later, as the afternoon lull settled in, Maddie changed her apron and prepared for the dinner shift. She stood in front of the mirror in the employee restroom, brushing loose strands of hair back into her ponytail. For the first time in a long time, she didn't see the scar first. She saw herself. Not the waitress, not the wounded. Just a woman, whole, worn in some places, bent in others, but still standing. And now, standing a little taller, she pinned the badge beside her name tag. It caught the light just right, like it had always been meant to be there. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the silo hills of Carver, the dinner crowd began to trickle into Jean's griddle. The scent of fried onions and warm pie drifted through the air like memory. Maddie moved between booths like she always had. Calm, efficient, deliberate. But something had changed. The regulars looked at her differently now, not at her scar. At her, she caught them in small moments. Mr. Halverson at table 5 offering a quiet nod as she poured his coffee. A teenage girl at table 9 smiling and saying, "Thank you, Mom," without flinching. Even the delivery guy, Tony, handed her the receipt without a second glance at her cheek. It wasn't that the scar had disappeared. It was that its power to define her had. And the pin, that brass eagle, gleamed beside her name tag like it had been waiting years for the right moment to shine. She caught her reflection in the window around closing time. The scar still pulled slightly at the corner of her mouth, giving her a permanent half smile that never quite reached her eyes. But tonight, it finally did. After the last customer paid, Maddie turned off the neon pen sign and sat on the stool behind the counter. Jean came out from the back, drying his hands. You did good today, he said, leaning on the counter. Maddie shrugged. Didn't feel like much, he chuckled. That's how you know it mattered. A pause. Then he added, that kid. Jacob, he reminded me of someone. The Maddie raised an eyebrow. Your brother, Jean said, the way he looked at you. Like you were 10 feet tall. She looked away, blinking back something soft. My brother died over there, she said quietly. I know. He was the brave one. You just showed up, Jean finished for her. Every damn day. That's what courage is. Outside, the last sliver of sun dropped below the trees. Inside, the last traces of shame dissolved like sugar in coffee. 2 weeks later, a small letter arrived in the mail at Jean's griddle. No return address. Just crisp block handwriting. Inside was a photo. Jacob Avery in full dress uniform standing in front of the flagpole at Ashridge Military Academy. On his chest, 3 new pins glinted under the morning light. But his note said only one thing. The first one still means the most. Thank you for reminding me what it's all for. Cadet J.A. Maddie pinned that photo beside the staff schedule in the break room. She didn't say a word about it. She didn't need to. A month passed. Then another. Life rolled on. The scar stayed. So did the badge. So did the quiet strength. And every time a customer glanced her way, Maddie met their eyes. Just for a second longer than she used to. A second long enough to remind them this face, this story, this life was not broken. It was earned. Scars don't always show on the outside. But when they do, They often tell stories that silence cowards and inspire the brave. This story isn't just about Maddie's scar, or Jacob's courage, or even about a cruel insult in a small town diner. It's about something deeper. It's about the quiet heroes we walk past every day, people who carry pain with dignity, who show up even when the world gives them every reason not to. It's about how kindness isn't weakness, and speaking up is never out of style. It's about the power of one voice, a boy in a uniform, reminding us all that respect isn't earned through smooth faces or loud mouths, but through service, sacrifice, and how we treat others when no one's watching. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more people like Maddie Colburn and Jacob Avery. People who show up, people who stand up, people who lift others up, even with trembling hands. So here's your moment. If you've ever carried a scar on your face, your heart, or your memories, know this: you are not alone. And if you've ever seen someone like Maddie walk through your life, don't stay silent. Let their story live. Say their name. Share their strength. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe to keep these stories alive, because what we honor becomes who we are.